Every 9 years, the city of Athens loaded 14 of its children onto a ship with black sails and sent them to Crete to be devoured by a monster. For 18 years, 2 full cycles, nobody tried to stop it. That detail tends to get glossed over in the popular version of this story. The Minotaur, the labyrinth, the hero with a sword, these are the parts that get remembered. But the story behind all of those things is stranger, uglier, and more complicated than a simple monster hunt. It starts not with a hero, but with a king who made a bad decision, and a god who punished entirely the wrong person for it. Minos was king of Crete, and he wanted to prove his right to rule. He prayed to Poseidon and asked for a sign. Poseidon sent one, a snow-white bull rising from the sea, blazing with divine beauty. The deal was implicit. The bull was a gift. The gift required a sacrifice in return. Minos looked at the bull and decided it was too magnificent to kill. He sent it to his herds and sacrificed a different, ordinary animal in its place, apparently hoping Poseidon would not notice. He did. The punishment did not land on Minos. It landed on his wife, Pasiphae, daughter of the sun god Helios, and in several ancient sources, a sorceress of considerable power. Poseidon afflicted her with an obsessive desire for the bull. She went to Daedalus, the master craftsman living at the palace, and asked for his help. Daedalus built a hollow wooden cow covered in real cowhide and placed it in the field where the bull grazed. The Minotaur was born 9 months later. His real name was Asterion. He had the body of a man and the head of a bull, and he was the living consequence of his father's broken promise, carried entirely by his mother. Minos, facing the most visible possible evidence of his own moral failure walking around the palace, asked Daedalus to build something to hide it. Daedalus built the labyrinth, an underground maze of such staggering complexity that anyone entering without guidance was guaranteed to wander until they died. The Minotaur was placed at its center. The labyrinth was not built to punish the monster. It was built to protect the king's reputation. The tribute came later. Minos' son Androgeos had traveled to Athens for an athletic competition, won everything in sight, and died shortly after under circumstances the ancient sources handle vaguely, either killed by a jealous king or killed by the Cretan bull that was still rampaging around the Greek countryside. Minos went to war with Athens over it and won. His terms were specific. Every 9 years, 7 young men and 7 young women, the finest Athens had to offer, delivered to Crete and fed to the Minotaur. Athens paid twice. On the 3rd cycle, a prince named Theseus volunteered to go. His father Aegeus, king of Athens, was terrified. Theseus promised him, if he survived and killed the Minotaur, he would change the ship's black sails to white on the return voyage. Aegeus could watch from the cliffs and know his son was coming home alive. When Theseus arrived in Crete, Ariadne, daughter of Minos, saw him and decided to help him. She went to Daedalus, who told her what Theseus would need. That night she came to him with 2 things, a sword and a ball of thread. He was to tie one end to the entrance of the labyrinth and unwind it as he moved deeper. The thread would lead him back out. A ball of thread in ancient Greek was called a clue. The word you use today when you are trying to solve a problem comes from Ariadne's thread in A Monster's Maze. Every detective novel, every mystery, every time someone says they do not have a clue, the language is still finding its way back to the labyrinth. Theseus went in. The ancient sources give slightly different accounts of what happened at the center, whether the Minotaur was sleeping or awake, whether Theseus used the sword or his bare hands. The consistent detail across all versions is that Theseus killed the Minotaur, followed the thread back to the entrance, and walked out alive with the other Athenian tributes behind him. He took Ariadne with him when he sailed. He had promised her that. On the way home, the ship stopped at the island of Naxos. The ancient sources disagree on what happened next. Some say Theseus abandoned her deliberately. Some say the god Dionysus had sent him a dream commanding him to leave her because Dionysus wanted her for his own wife. Either way, when the ship sailed from Naxos, Ariadne was still on the island alone. She eventually married Dionysus, depending on the source, or died there of grief. The tradition hedges and declines to commit. Theseus forgot to change the sails. His father Aegeus was waiting on the cliffs above the harbor at Athens, watching the horizon. The ship appeared. The sails were black. Aegeus threw himself into the sea. The sea was named for him, the Aegean. Theseus came home victorious. The monster was dead, the tribute was finished, and his father was gone. The ancient Greeks did not soften that ending. They let it stand exactly as it was. The labyrinth itself survived in a different form than anyone expected. In the 19th century, archaeologist Arthur Evans excavated the Bronze Age palace complex at Knossos on Crete and found something extraordinary. A sprawling, multi-roomed structure of extraordinary complexity, its walls decorated with frescoes of young athletes vaulting over bulls. The palace had over 1,000 rooms. Getting lost in it would have required no effort at all. The Minotaur may have been a myth built around a real place. The monster at the center of the maze possibly stood in for something that actually happened there. Sacrificial rituals, athletic rites involving bulls, the memory of a Minoan civilization so alien to the mainland Greeks that they could only make sense of it through a monster. What has never required a historical explanation is the shape of the story itself. A king's pride creates a monster. The monster gets hidden rather than addressed. Other people pay the price for the concealment. The hero who finally ends the cycle forgets, in his moment of triumph, the one thing that mattered to the person waiting at home. The labyrinth in this story was never really underground. It was always the thing Minos built around his own mistake, and kept feeding so no one would have to look at what was inside. If you've enjoyed this dive into mythology, subscribe to our channel for more. Thanks for watching.